Good evening and welcome to the June 4th, 2014 meeting of the Lake Forest Building Review Board. I'm Charlie King, Chairman of the Building Review Board. At this time, I ask the members of the board to introduce themselves, starting to my left.
Fred Moyer.
Robert Reda.
Michael Bleck.
Ted Notz.
Ross Friedman.
The board is here tonight to work together with all of you, property owners, architects, neighbors, and interested citizens, to continue the long tradition that allows Lake Forest residents and businesses to work together to preserve the qualities and the unique character that make Lake Forest a special community. We recognize the personal importance of each petitioner's request. Our goal is to respect the needs and desires of property owners while balancing the interests of the community as a whole to preserve and enhance its architectural character and landscape streetscapes. For those of you who may not be familiar with the Building Review Board, the types of projects that come before this board are those in which the property owners are requesting a variance to allow a home that is larger than permitted by the code, are seeking a demolition permit and approval of a replacement structure, or otherwise involve issues that could not be fully resolved by city staff. It is important to note that over 95% of building permits are issued by the city without the need of any board review. Thus, the board typically deals with the most challenging and sometimes controversial projects. The City of Lake Forest is committed to conducting open and fair meetings. To achieve that goal, the board has adopted meeting and procedures, and all parties will be provided an opportunity to speak. These procedures are outlined on the agendas available at the back of the room. This meeting is also broadcast on cable television. Speaking on behalf of the entire board and city staff, our objective is to provide a review process that is thorough, fair, and without necessary delay. The next order of business is approval of the minutes of our previous meeting, which are not quite ready yet. So we'll dive right into the first petition, which is a consideration of a request for a building scale variance for a new dormer, rear porch, and pergola at the residence located at 1785 Broadland Lane. The owners are Ted and Amy Langan, and representative is John Anstadt, architect. Before we begin, has anyone have any conflicts on this particular agenda? Okay. Welcome.
Welcome. Good evening. John Anstadt, A. Perry Designs and Builds. I did a brief PowerPoint to kind of highlight what we were looking to do, so I'm just going to go straight into that. This is our site location. A couple of items that I really want to point out of importance is the location of Conway Farms Drive in relationship to our house. Our house is this reddish area here. We do get great views of the pond behind us, and we do get some views of the golf course just down the way. We are facing south as well, majority south. This is our front elevation. The elevation is mainly brick and cedar clapboards. We have dormers and cedar shake roof. This is our rear elevation. This is the view that you get from the drive. The massing of the rear elevation is quite different than the front elevation. We have a majority of two-story elements on the right side and a main gable over a bay window that is the most visual sense of that elevation. So when we looked at this project, what we were looking for is we were trying to get some continuity and just take some of the massing down of our existing rear elevation. Clients love the front elevation, love the porch, love the details and the quaintness of it, and we just didn't have any of that at the rear elevation. So to us, this rear elevation did not have any consistency with that front elevation. We had the two-story massing. We don't have any covered entryways over the access points. We have two access points into the house currently. And there was just a lacking of a connection with the exterior spaces. So here are a couple of sketches of our proposed design elements. We are proposing a porch over the majority portion of the rear of the house. This porch we want to have come out about 8 feet. We also would like to take out some of the windows and replace them with French doors, again, to embrace the outside elements. The bay window, which is really small compared to the element it's supporting, we are proposing to square off. So now that bay window is the exact same size as the mass that's above it. On the upper photo, you'll see a pergola. Our main purpose for this pergola is to kind of hide the massing of where our AC condensers are, which right now are at that corner, and that is one of the first elements you see as you drive down that road. So we're proposing a pergola there to kind of hide those elements. And we are adding a small dormer window right up here in this portion of a roof. And that's to grant some light to the inside, a new bathroom that we wanted to add. This is a straight-on shot from the rear showing our porch going from here to there, and then the inclusion of all the French doors. Column detail, this is the column detail that we have in front of the house, and we're proposing the exact same column detail at the rear. That would be these elements here, just to tie in the front to the rear. And I'm just going to leave a couple of slides up here just for visual sense. And I think the homeowners would like to say a word or two about the project, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Hi, good evening. My name is Ted Langan. This is my wife, Amy. We're excited to come here and talk to you all about the things that we'd like to do to the house. We love the house. We love the neighborhood. We love the open spaces, the views of the surrounding area and the golf course. And we think that we can further enhance the house and the neighborhood by the addition of this porch and really open up the back of the house and take advantage of the terrific views we have of the lake and of the golf course. So I think it'll help with the consistency and the appearance of the house. We're trying to tie the front and the back together. So with that, I'd like to take any questions that you all have.
Thank you very much. Is that it?
Thank you.
Okay, great. Kathy, staff report, please.
Thank you, Chairman King. This is a request for a building scale variance. The code does allow for variances and establishes criteria which the board is charged with using and reviewing these criteria. In this case, as detailed in the staff report, we do believe that the proposed request for a variance meets the standards. The architectural elements that are proposed actually do serve to help reduce the visual mass of the rear elevation. This house is located in a way that the rear, during certain times of the year, is viewed directly from Conway Farms Drive, a public road. A couple mitigating factors. A portion of this property is actually part of the detention pond. So the square footage of the detention pond area is only allowed to be calculated at 50% when calculating the allowable total square footage. The findings do recognize that if there's a wetland or a bluff or a detention pond adjacent, that can be in part justification for the building scale variance. This property is located in Conway Farms. Conway Farms is one of the few subdivisions that have their own very active architectural review board. You do have a letter of support and a consent to allow the board to go forward if you choose. Staff does recommend approval, and the findings are in the staff report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we'll take any questions from the board to the petitioner or staff.
I have one.
Go ahead, Bob.
I like it. It's a nice looking project.
Thank you.
I have a couple of observations that I'm not an architect, so take them with a grain of salt in essence. One is the pergola that's located on the one end seems to me to be a little too tall, only because I don't know if it's the garage or whatever the unit is all the way to the left side. It appears like it's way above the gutter. And I was wondering if you thought about maybe dropping it down a little bit. I don't know if you can, visually or architecturally. But
You can address that. We could take it down. The thought was the main, the left to right horizontal members of the pergola, we wanted to line up with the fascia of the porch.
The bottom of the fascia?
Bottom of the right at the fascia. So the freeze board would come across, and that would be our bottom member of our pergola. And then our top members of the pergola would go on top of that. So that was how we kind of set the height of that. Existing, there is a small little picket fence that is underneath that pergola, and then the AC condensers are back behind that. I think this drawing doesn't do it justice because it looks really tall here. I think in actuality, it's not as tall as it appears here because of the other elements that we're dealing with on the site.
Okay.
But we're happy to address that if we think that's a way to go.
I think it's more aesthetic than anything else. Then the only other point I got is the dividing lights and all the French doors. Mm-hmm. They just seem really, because there's nothing on the top, or even on like the top of the double hungs, and then all of a sudden you got a lot of them.
Right, we do have them on the top windows as well. They're just not depicted on our drawing.
Okay, perfect.
Just because those were existing windows, and sometimes the way the CAD works, it's hard to show those. So they are throughout the house. And that is an architectural element, I believe, that Conway Farms dictates.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this has already cleared the Conway Farms HOA?
Yes.
They've scrubbed it with you and?
Yes. Yeah, we've had a number of meetings with them to fine tune it. We actually would have liked to have taken the porch all the way across the entire back of the house because we do have a set of French doors on that right side as well. There's a setback over there that impedes us from doing that. So when we met with staff, we decided not to include that as part of the variance.
Is there a proposed landscape plan?
There is, I believe one was included in the packet, if I'm not mistaken. So there are a bunch of dying trees right now that we are planning to remove and replace, and just add to the landscaping that's there now.
Is the intent to soften that corner from the road?
Yes, definitely.
There's an overall landscape plan that we're working on. We're gonna take all those big, old dying Austrian pines out and replace those with new trees and relocate a couple of the existing ones to add privacy to it and to soften up that corner.
And does the HOA have an interest in the landscaping as well?
Yes, they do.
Yes,
They control that too?
they've seen,
Any neighbor concerns?
None that we are aware of.
Are these proposed columns in the rear matching the front columns?
Yes.
The detail?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening. A few questions, starting with the second set of French doors that are being added to the west. That's a lot of light that's looking right into effectively your door to your stairway and the laundry room. Have you visually, had you considered, rather than using such a full set of French doors where that view wasn't really necessary, utilizing something that might match the window that you're leaving in place just to help break up this wall of glass that you're adding in along the back wall?
We had, but that would have been one way to address it. We like the French doors. The furthest left doors that you see is a home office. And right now, that hallway that's there, I believe it's about 3 foot 3 inches wide or so, feels really tight. And the thought was the French doors there would really help open up that space and make that feel bigger than it actually is.
Okay. With regard to the window dormer for the bathroom, almost above that same door, proportionally, it feels like it's almost being squeezed into a relatively tight space. Had you considered any other options, whether it's just extending that wall from where the existing bedroom dormer is east? You're not squeezing something in?
Right. We actually had looked at mimicking the two window dormer next to it in a way to do two gables next to each other. And
You're referring to which location, I'm sorry?
on the one, we were looking to perhaps mimic this, where there's a detail where you can put two of these right next to each other, and have two gables that come right next to each other, and then you do a roof from back there to help the water situation, which would have given us more light and more space on the interior. What we were struggling with was one that adds more square footage to what we're already over. And the other aspect of it just started getting to be more of a big element like this, which we're really trying to get away from. This was the real element that bothered us with this house, is how big that was. So we thought matching this dormer with the dormers that are on the front of the house was the way to go to kind of tie into it.
Thank you. The other question I have, the patio underneath the trellis, what is that concrete as well, or what are you imagining for that?
We were going to leave that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ted, but we were going to leave that what it was, which is gravel and just some shrubbery along the sides, and do a new patio out on this side.
What material?
The patio, what are we proposing for the patio, excuse me?
I think we're looking at field stone for the patio under the,
Excuse me, could you come up to the microphone just so everyone can hear? Thanks.
I'm sorry. Under the patio, we're looking at field stone, or under the porch, we're looking at field stone. And then under the pergola, we were looking at field stone with a gap in between the stones so you could get some kind of a moss or a short grass in there, so it would kind of break that up a little bit. And then, you know, we would probably salvage the existing pavers that we have, because there's a fairly large porch out behind the house today, and we would salvage those pavers. And that's what, if you look at the landscape plan that's in your packages, you see that there's a couple of porches outside. We'd reuse that, that element there. And we've been told by the gentleman who's doing the landscaping that we have ample pavers to do that.
Okay. My final question, I noticed that it doesn't seem to be any transition steps between that gravel patio area we were just discussing and the new concrete patio that you're building behind the house. Have you considered any way to help transition if you're going to and from those 2 points?
Being at this point right here?
Right.
We are planning to have transition steps there as well as here. Again, it's something that we hadn't shown in this elevation, but we will have steps down from this patio down to here, and a step on this one as well.
Okay. The only thing I just want to come back to is because visually, I'm wrestling with the single window that's now between your new French doors, and had you given any thought to removing that window and maybe just sliding the French doors down so you take advantage of the light you're looking for, but having more of a consistent flow that's not broken up by the single window that's still remaining?
Right, if I can just change slides here. Our visual sense when we were laying this out was with the columns here as well. So I think from this perspective here, which is a straight on one, what we were doing is we were trying to create some rhythm with the columns and the French doors behind us. And this seemed to be the logical place to keep that existing window with these columns spacing the way we had them. And then this triple unit here between, again, two of these columns that were there. It was actually, it took a while to get the spacing right because you have a lot of elements that we're trying to fit in within a column spacing that should be consistent.
Well, sort of just to take your logic, if you look at your main mass, just to the right of that, where you center the middle column in the middle of those 4 panes of French doors, could you not follow sort of the same logic with that?
You could. Right, I have to look at the plan here, but right back in here, I believe, is where we have our staircase. And if I would slide these over too far here, I think we would miss some of the light coming to that staircase that was going upstairs.
Okay, that's all I have. I appreciate your addressing my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, questions? No?
Well, I think it's very nice, and I think the trellis is going to be a very nice focal feature for the passersby coming across the pond or the roadway and so on, which just leads to thought, which is purely a matter probably of personal preference, but it seems like that'd be a great opportunity for some hanging flower baskets or something of that type hanging from the trellis, giving it some splash of color that will just enhance what it is. We're thinking, we're on the same page.
He's way ahead of you on that one.
Oh, you're way ahead of me, okay.
There you go.
You probably picked out the flowers already, okay. No, I think that's great, and I think that fits right in with what you're doing here. Thank you.
Okay. Just one question. The second floor, the additional dormer you're putting there, is there an existing bathroom there, or is that bathroom going to be made possible because of this dormer?
That's a new bathroom.
That's a new bath entirely. Okay. All right. Any other questions, gentlemen? Okay. All right. Now's a chance for anyone from the public to testify if they wish to come up. Okay. Seeing none. Any final questions from the board to the petitioner or staff? Okay. We now go into our internal board discussion and comment. Ross, you want to kick it off?
Sure. I think they've done a very nice job of matching the existing, complementing the existing architecture, the site plan, the overall massing, the layout, the accoutrements, although it is over bulk. We always take that very seriously. Don't wish to set precedents, but it has the blessing of the Conway Farms HOA, so it's already past that muster. Well, in light of the bulk, I still believe that it's a very pleasing asset, and I could support this.
Okay.
The only thing to come back to that's really gnawing at me is the small bathroom window. If there were another solution you could think of to help that flow and fit in better. But other than that, I have no other comments to add.
Okay. Michael?
I think it's a well-thought-out design, and I think the staff report is very thorough and complete and identifies that it's meets all the standards that we need to look at in order for us to feel comfortable with this. So I'm in favor of it.
Okay, great.
I agree. I think the homeowners association made a run at it already, and they're satisfied. I hate to put you guys through it all over again. Yeah, I'm in favor for it.
Okay.
Yeah. I agree also. I think it's a great improvement, advancement of the appearance of the house and the usefulness for the owners.
Great. I concur. I think it's a nice improvement to the rear of the house, which it is going to be very prominent as you come down Conway. I would say I do have Ted's one uneasiness. The small dormer on the second floor seems just a little odd to me, but not so much that I would not approve this thing. But a moment on the variance, the bulk variance here, as you noted, very important for us to take that into consideration. I think in this one there's quite a few mitigating circumstances, and I think Kathy hit the nail on the head in that this addition to the house is actually going to reduce the massing of the house, which is nice. The rear elements right now are rather stark, and this is going to help the massing. I think the overall bulk of this house is very in fitting with the neighborhood, so I'm supportive of this and think it's a nice plan. So with that being said, does anybody have a motion here?
I'll move to approve the petition as submitted, subject to the findings and recommendations in the staff report.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none? Thank you. Motion is approved. Good luck.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is consideration of a request for approval of a new single-family dwelling, including the site plan and associated landscaping on a vacant lot located at 1101 Griffith Road. The owner is Youth Shelter LLC, John M. Sorensen. The representative is Brad Corando, architect.
USB just pull up then? let you work on that. I'm John Sorensen. This is Jack Sorensen. We are with U.S. Shelter. We are a 45-year family-owned home builder who has operated in the Chicagoland area our whole existence. We have built and developed in 7 North Shore communities, not including Lake Forest. Today with us we have our Scott Javor and Associates, Brad and Scott. They are based out of Glencoe. They are the architect for this project that we are proposing at 1101 Griffith, and their firm specializes in historic preservation and new construction architecture. The next slide here shows the proposed single-family residence as an existing lot this past winter. The lot size is a total of 7,125 square feet. It is pie-shaped in nature, approximately 60 feet at the front, about 136 feet down the south side, 141 down the north, and 43 at the rear. The next few slides will show some examples of the existing neighborhood and what we're building around. 1107 Griffith Road is the home immediately to the north. It is a wider lot, approximately 10% wider than ours. The home to the south is 1091 Griffith. That is shown here as well with an approximately 58-foot wide lot. Next slide shows 2 homes across the street, 1096 Griffith and 1100 Griffith. We're showing you these because the plans we feel we're proposing, which Brad and Scott will get into in a little further detail here next, are very similar in materials and nature to many of the homes in the neighborhood. 1088 Griffith, 1119, a little further north, and then we have 1077 Griffith and 1066. So the proposed new single-family residence, some of the basics, the home will be 2,265 square feet, which is within the Lake Forest allowable footage and size for this particular home site. We are not requesting any variances here today. The first floor is 1,168 square feet with the second floor of approximately 1,011 square feet and a third floor of non-living space at 86 square feet. To show the height, which we'll get to in a streetscape next, the proposed total height of 1101 Griffith, as we've proposed, would be 719.7 would be the elevation, meaning that from the existing grade to the peak, the top point of the roof, that's approximately 30 feet, and then approximately to the underside of the roof or the bottom of the gutters is about 19 feet. The total height of 1107 immediately to the north is 714.58, and the home to the south, 1091, is 719.33. So it's virtually the same height as the home immediately to the south. The exterior building materials, we believe the proposed materials are consistent again with the neighborhood. They're generally natural. The siding on the first floor is a select tight knot cedar lap siding per the elevation. We've had some color renderings next. The color we're proposing is Cabot Fieldstone. Second floor is a cedar shake shingle wall siding, which the Cabot Pewter Gray is the color shown. Windows would be Marvin Integrity with a bronze exterior. The roofing is a composition architectural shingle. And Certainteed product with the Heather blend is the color we're going for with a real masonry fireplace brick. So again, here this shows the front colored, the west elevation as we're proposing, which Scott and Brad will get into a little further detail, and the north, the south, and then the east is the rear with a person there for approximate height and proportion. It's all in the package as well. Next slide is the garage. This will be consistent with the materials that we're using in the home, and it is actually under, I believe, the allowed size. The next slide here is the proposed streetscape. This is to scale. This was included in the in the package, and it just shows kind of the massing of the neighborhood as it would exist with the new proposed resident and the height compared to the neighbors. This next slide here is the Lake County drainage map or Lake County elevation. As you'll see, there's generally a west to east flow, west to southeast, going from 690 as an elevation at the street to 685, and actually a little less in the as we get further east. So water, we believe, is flowing over the lot, actually probably over the whole street currently to the east, and what we plan to do to help prevent additional runoff would be tie the sump pumps in with the Lake Forest storm system. There is a storm line that runs under Griffith, so we would be going against gravity up to the street. We will add a 2-foot yard drain at the northeast corner of the lot for collecting water from the drive, and also tying the gutters on the north side of the house and the garage to that storm system to help collect the water. And then the next slide here shows this will all be developed by Green Guard Engineering out of Lincolnshire and submitted for final approval. But the next slide shows the overall site plan. In the rear, the east side of the drive is proposed pervious pavers to help slow down any water flow across the lot. The city arborist has reviewed the plans and made recommendations on the trees. There in the front left corner, there is a actually, that would be the southwest corner, I apologize. There is a 46-inch elm, or a large elm tree. We are approximately 44 feet from that tree, so saving it will be possible. And then we've moved the garage forward here to save a rather large 36-inch tree on the neighbor's property to the east of us. Next site shows just a general proposed landscape plan, which shows some groupings, trees. We would, any trees that are removed, there are several ash on the south side of the lot currently, we would replace per the specs and requirements with new trees and plant. We're proposing to plant some shade trees and barriers between the driveways. So next, Scott is going to talk here about the architecture and a little bit about the home.
Oh, I can advance it if you wish.
Thanks. I'm Scott Javor. This is Brad Carando. We're the architects for the project. The style we selected is an American Foursquare, and it was a style popular from the 1890s through the 1930s. When we design a new house, we always want to authenticate a style, make sure we're doing things correctly, not copy it or imitate it, but make sure we're using the right elements. We use McAllister's book for architectural styles as a reference. We also used, in this case, Sears Honor Built Home catalog, which was kit homes that were produced by Sears from 1908 through 1932. And there are hundreds of them in the Midwest, and they did very authentic styles, and they really sort of set the benchmark for design during that era. So the characteristics of a Foursquare are a main block of the house, a pyramidal or hip roof, usually a dormer, sometimes 3, sometimes 4, sometimes none, often paired double-hung windows, sometimes they're singles, always a front porch that extends across the entire facade. The entrance to the porch could be either centered or justified to the right or left, that varied. The porch would usually have some sort of more bold pier supporting the columns. Our proposal reflects these elements. We have a main block of the house. We have a hip or pyramidal roof. We have a dormer that's kind of blending in because it's a little light here, but also a chimney which is attached to the outside of the house, a full masonry chimney, very simple. You can see that on this house as well. Overhanging roof, a wider overhang, which is similar to this. We use pair windows, 3/1 double hungs. As John said, they're a bronze finish to reflect that era. We repeated that triple division in the front door. There's a little gable identifying the front door. The porch columns have a slightly enlarged base or pier to sit on. And the railing is fairly simple, and the porch runs across the entire front of the house. Okay, this is another example of a Foursquare. This shows the center entrance. Materials could be anything. It could be masonry, stucco, clapboard, shingles, or a combination of any of those, and I'm sure you've seen all of that. This is the north side of the house as we're proposing it. This is, of course, the chimney, very simple. We did articulate it with a box bay in the stairwell. That's something that the staff mentioned we may want to discuss, but there is historical precedent for it. It's extending the stairwell, bringing in more light, and it really articulates this side of the house nicely. This is going to be a very visible side of the house, and I actually think it gives it more scale, shadow, and interest than not having it there would. Thanks. The other thing we've shown is a raised belt course, which is this line around the house, similar to what you're seeing here. We have clapboard siding below and shingles above. This also has a center entrance. This has paired windows. This has the dormer, the applied chimney. And then it also has a box bay engaged into the soffit in this case. On this example, it has a floating box bay, which I'm sure is in the stairwell as well, very similar to what we're proposing. Finally, on the front of the house, we have a projection. It's sort of a hip-roofed bay coming out. It extends the living room down here, extends the bedroom on the second floor. We did it for two reasons. One was to gain more space in both of those rooms, to be sure, but we also, again, wanted to break down the mass of the front of the house. And we do have the historical precedent for doing that as well, where this house on the left has the projecting hip-roof bay. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Kathy, staff report, please.
Thank you, Chairman King. Anytime a vacant lot in an established neighborhood is proposed for development, it's always a tough project. In this case, this lot has been a buildable lot since the subdivision occurred in the early 1920s. This property was in common ownership with a neighboring lot. It is a buildable lot. As was mentioned, the proposal before you is in full conformance. It meets the zoning setbacks. It is actually 4 square feet below the maximum allowable bulk. It does take advantage of some of the design elements, so there are some square footage bonuses, for instance, for the covered porch. In looking at infill development, one thing that we often hear is how it relates to the neighboring homes. And in this case, the neighboring home to the north presents a very narrow, a quite narrow elevation to this house. In addition, there really is very little opportunity for landscaping on the north side of the house because of both the driveway for this new house and the neighboring driveway. So as we looked at the house, the two elements identified in your staff report for your discussion are first, the box bay on the north elevation, which does add an element to that north side of the house. It certainly does break it up a bit, but it also adds something that pushes out further to the north side of the house. And then the front, the additional mass that's on the front of the house at that northern corner, that adds a couple feet to the length of that north elevation. It also creates a front elevation that isn't quite a true American four-square. Other than that, the house is certainly proposed with high-quality materials, natural materials, simulated true divided light windows. The city arborist has been out to the site and really determined that on this property, the existing trees really were not of high quality. A number of them were ash, others were really not worth saving. So other than the two trees identified, the elm in the parkway, the oak to the rear, take steps to preserve those, protect those, but really benefit from taking the tree inches removed and adding some trees that over time will become large shade trees on this property. A key issue with infill development, two key issues. One is drainage, and I recognize that it is not the Building Review Board's purview to discuss drainage, but you will see conditions that speak to drainage. You heard some options for dealing with drainage. The city engineer will ultimately review a drainage plan, determine whether connection to the storm sewer is appropriate, look at the capacity of that sewer. The condition also speaks, however, to drainage during construction, and I think we are seeing more that the city needs to be aware of what's happening on the site, and again, recognizing it isn't your purview, I think a condition of this type helps raise the awareness of city staff throughout the process and ensures that we're more engaged in really looking out for the neighbors as construction occurs. The second issue that is very important to neighborhoods is construction parking, staging of materials, construction equipment. And given the narrowness of Griffith Road, as we've done in other cases, parking, a parking material staging plan will need to be submitted for review and approval by city staff prior to the issuance of a permit, and construction parking will be limited to the street just in front of this property. Staging or storing anything near the elm tree would not be permitted, and it is very possible that shuttling will need to occur. There is public parking not too far away in the lots off of McKinley Road. So those are some conditions that really are unique to this project, recognizing that it's in a tight neighborhood and the neighbors have expressed some concern. You should have 2 letters that were provided as part of your packet. City staff did receive other calls from neighboring property owners, really with concerns about how the house is going to fit into the neighborhood, drainage, and just managing construction. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thanks, Kathy. Okay. Questions from the board to the petitioner or staff? Fred, you want to
Well,
start
a
off?
question, it may be evident on the plan, but I don't see it, so I'll just ask, what is the dimension between the proposed north elevation and the house that is on the next property to the north? What distance between them? I realize it's a tapering dimension, but let's say the average dimension.
Let me find that and get right back to you. I think that's in there, but I will, I'll get that. Or actually, you know what, I may be able to get that. No, I've downloaded everything. I'm sure. We have the grading plan right here. This was all submitted to scale. You're saying the house to the north?
Yes.
The distance of the house to the north, I don't have that very, without having a scalable set of plans. This was, if you have the original documents,
As a point of reference, the proposed garage front elevation, I believe, is 23 feet across. If you look at that and you compare it to, say, the projection of the chimney and box bay, which are the same projection, you're looking at a distance that's approximately the width of the front of the garage.
You see, the landscape plan has a graphic scale,
this one.
and it looks like it would be about 35 feet, 38 feet possibly, at the average. If I'm just using the graphic scale on the LA.1 scheme or plan sheet.
Not being, it looks like, yeah, 30, 35
I'll
feet.
take that, yeah, there's a little bit less than that, yeah.
We're not outside of any setbacks, so
Yeah, it looks like it reasonably is 30 feet of separation. Thank you.
I have questions. I'm sorry, you finished? Yeah. Great. These are directed to the architect. One of the things one of our responsibilities is to make sure that the type of buildings stay true to the architectural style. And one of the things when I look at this, these are great drawings, but there's too much. And my first observation is that the drawing on the front elevation, which you guys call the west elevation, if you could bring that up on your slideshow.
Yeah, right there.
Right, you can flip it up, right?
Yeah.
Okay, on this image, on the right side, if you look at the front porch with the little guy standing there, and you look straight up from there, it looks like your little mini ornamental dormer is closer to the house instead of extending outwards towards the street. And I think that's a nice looking ornament. The one that's in the plans that I have in front of me shows it extending out similar to the way you have it in the back, in the rear of the house. And I'm just trying to figure out which ones you have, because if it is gonna be jutting out towards the street, I think it's ornamentally too much. It doesn't really stay consistent with a four square. All right, while you're looking at that, I have another point.
You're referring to the dormer in the roof, right?
No.
Dormer in the porch roof.
Oh, the porch.
The little ornamental dormer.
It's actually an offset with the house.
Right. And that's not in keeping with a four square. If you're gonna have a little dormer ornamentally that's inside the gutter line in essence, for me, that's fine, but if you're gonna project it out similar to the way you have it on the back porch, I've got problems with that.
The back porch is a stoop roof,
Right.
purely over the platform. The front ornamental dormer is engaged into the overall front roof. It does not project forward at all. It just
Well-
comes out of the roof.
But if you look at, okay, that's great, but if you, that's, on the right side of your picture, the front one looks like it is part of the roof itself, doesn't extend out, but if you look at the left side, you can tell that, is it the frieze board? What's the vertical board?
Fascia?
The fascia board, you can see the fascia board's broken up right above the doorway. And it looks like it's extending out.
It is.
Okay,
It is.
all right. All right, because that's one issue.
Okay.
The second issue is the extension of the, like, smaller dormer towards, on the front of the house, which is that extra ornamental, which you showed us an example of, I think kind of messes with the simplicity of a four square. And in this relation, as a minimal point, the roof line, the porch roof line is broken up because of it. And what that does is, I know why you guys want to do it, and it's a good point for you, but your neighbor to the north is going to see that long wall, and that's going to cause some problems. I think it's inconsistent with this beautiful drawing that you had and the way you put the house together. I think you put it together great, but I have real problems with the porch, that extension of the little mini dormer on the porch roof, but I also have problems with that entire smaller dormer jutting forward, not only because I think it messes up with the four square architectural style, but that the north elevation is going to be somewhat difficult for the neighbor. I don't have as much problem with the little piece that you have for the hallway on the north side, but I do think that when you're looking, like if you showed the slide of the north side, I think it messes with the roof line, extends the house a little bit too long, and that's gonna affect the neighbor.
So on the front,
Yes.
you don't mind the little inside gable, but it's the fact that
Oh, not in the front, on the side, you have that,
No, I'm going back to the front.
okay, good.
But, so, you mind that the roof breaks forward about 6 inches around it? Is that right?
Yeah, on the porch roof,
In
you're
the
saying?
front. So if that ran straight across, you wouldn't have any trouble with the gable kind of
Well, that-
floating there.
Bob, I think you're talking about the extension itself.
On the front
You'd like to
porch.
see a
Yeah.
flush
Right.
front facade.
And then, but if you had, a foot or 2 feet back from that, and you had a little ornamental mini
Yeah.
gable there?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd actually break up the water flow, get away from the front door anyway.
Okay, that's no problem at all.
But then the other extension, I know it's gonna reduce the square footage of the house, but if you look at the neighbor houses, they're all relatively simple looking, and one of the criteria for us is to make sure the streetscape stays the same. And if we have too many elements, it's gonna throw it off, and you're gonna lose a little bit of square feet, but it'll clean up the front and make it more to the old Sears style four square. And then my other comments are along the lines of, and I think this is just CAD drawing stuff. If you look around some of the windows on the front, it looks like some have extra elements to them of vertical boards and stuff, but I'm gonna give you guys the benefit of the doubt that that's just a CAD drawing issue. All the windows are gonna be the same, right? And they're all gonna be framed the same? Yeah, okay. That's my comments.
Any questions?
Not at this moment.
Ted, questions?
I do. Along the vein of the front porch, I would like to see that cleaned up and eliminate the bump out over the front door. I think eliminating it cleans up the front, eliminates a lot of distractions, particularly with the fact that you're looking to try and bump out the living room and the bedroom as well. I don't have so much of an issue with the bump out there, but again, if you could, everything you can do to help clean up the front facade would be, I think, more conducive to the house and its surroundings. I had a question on your first floor plan, which suggests that there's an additional bump out in your living room. That on the floor plan is worded exempt. It wasn't evident on your front elevation, and I was, again, toward the point of keeping things as simple as possible, that living room exempt bump out adds to the complexity of that front elevation, and I'd like to see that cleaned up and just run, just have that living room front wall run straight across. Other than that, I didn't necessarily have any issue with the stairwell bay, or whatever the technical term is to identify that. The fact that it's staying in line with the northernmost edge of the chimney, I think is the right direction. Other than that, I have no other comments.
Would you clarify, please, you had mentioned, although drainage and grading is not in our purview, but you mentioned that you will be tying into the city storm sewer, and I thought you said that it pitches up to Griffith.
I may have, once we have the final approved, or we know which direction we're going with the plans, these will go to an engineer, a civil engineer, which is Green Guard out of Lincolnshire. And they will design a system that will take the water.
But you're not talking about a lift station?
No. It's
Gravity
just,
fed.
it's the gravity, it's the height. So what I was trying to say is that we're going against the general flow. When you look at the Lake County and you stand there on the lot, is southeast. I mean, it's just there's a lot of fall there, and there's only so much you can do about that. So I was just trying to say we would be taking the sump and then the gutters and the water into the storm system.
The examples you flashed of representative square homes, they were elevated. Handful of steps up to an elevated front porch. Yours is more at grade, one step up?
That's correct. We are at the maximum height allowed, or it would be very nice to do that.
What is your porch material?
Porch material?
Porch material, the columns are wood columns with panels below. They're 1.5-inch square balusters with a wood rail on top of it. The surface of the porch.
Excuse me, can you use the microphone, please?
Sure. All of the railing and column elements of the porch are to be wood. They'll have panel detailing at the base. The balusters themselves will be 1.5-inch square material. As far as the cladding of the porch, you're working with the landscape architect. Cedar decking on the front porch.
What is the color palette of the exterior?
The color palette, can we go back to the...
Color palette of the exterior.
Yes, please.
It was a Cabot color. I think one of the colors was a field stone and the other one was a pewter gray, so it's kind of gray in nature.
And the windows,
And the windows are bronze.
bronze clad?
Dark bronze, yes.
driveway is asphalt?
The driveway is asphalt to a point, and then there is a portion that we are proposing pavers to help with runoff.
Was there a calculation performed on the impervious surface?
I believe there was.
This clears it?
And it clears it, yes.
Is this a for sale home?
It will be.
Thank you.
If you could put up the south elevation, please. Is there, there's the windows on the first floor, they're offset a little bit. Obviously, the first three on the left are at one height, and then the next two are a different height. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, it's the kitchen area. So the two on the right that appear to be elevated have flat wood panels at the lower level, and then transom elements at the upper level. The transoms will come in above the cabinetry on the wall of the kitchen to provide natural light into the room from the south elevation.
And you don't think that'd be better if those are aligned all at the same elevation?
Well, in order to get, the cabinetry, storage space in the kitchen, it becomes a case of, you either have storage or you have the windows. If we were to bring them at a lower level, we looked at this as an opportunity to have both.
Could you raise the ones on the left?
We could. It would sort of change the proportion of the room, though. The window heads are set at door head heights, and
okay, thank you. They mentioned a little bit of landscaping between the two, the house proposed here and the house to the north. Looks like there's a little bit of strip of land there. What landscaping might you propose there, and is there anything actually that will live given that tight space there?
We were told, I'll pull up the landscape plan here. We were meeting originally with Megan Newman for several months on this project through a couple different floor plans, but she had said at this stage, and when we submitted this, she was still the contact we were working with, just preliminary conceptual, because it would depend on the approved foundation, how many square inches of tree we remove. We have to replace it with a certain quality of tree. So what we're providing and what we're illustrating here is just a general, we plan some general probably evergreen type trees to help block the neighbors, and it's just a general idea of a proposed foundation planting plan. So I had understood that the requirement is the final landscape plan gets approved before rough framing final from the staff report. So we still have some time, is the way we had understood that. So we don't have the exact species, or this is just a conceptual where we plan to plant things. And I believe they would live between there. I think there's 6 feet of space.
6 feet.
And Chairman King, the other reason you don't have a final landscape plan is we require the grading plan to be finalized, grading and drainage plan to be finalized. If that area in fact is needed for some swaling, that would limit the type and amount of vegetation that could go in that area.
Sure.
So we would work with engineering and with our arborist to determine what could live in there and what would not interfere with drainage.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. Okay, that's all the questions I have. Anybody, any other questions?
I have a follow-up, if that's
Please
okay.
do.
If you go back to that south elevation, the transom windows that you were talking about, did I hear you say that you're actually going to have, below the transom is not glass, it's just kind of a fake panel?
it's a wood panel, solid.
Do you need it?
I think it provides, balance, overall size, the detailing. You don't see any, short windows on that side of the house, so that's the logic behind why it's there.
Well, so, all right, so what would you paint that piece of wood?
It would be painted to match the trim around it, a light color.
the bronze color or the,
No, no.
like a white?
Yeah, white.
So all the trim's gonna be white, and then the windows are gonna be that bronze color?
Like an off-white, yeah.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Go ahead, Fred.
I was going to ask the same question. I don't know if we're in the comment period or not. It's still just questions?
Still just questions now, and we can certainly comment on it at the appropriate time.
I'm
ahead,
sorry,
Ted.
we're talking about the two kitchen windows, that bottom pane is not
Yes.
glass?
No.
No, it's wood panel.
Is that an MDO or what type of product?
Most likely an MDO. I mean, an exterior rated sheet good. MDO is, one of the options. There's Medex. I mean, MDO is probably the best material to go with.
Is that the same case for the bathroom window?
No, the bathroom window, this is sort of a limitation of, CAD drawings. It's an obscure glass in the window. So the shading showed up a little dark.
Not as obscure as it looks.
No. It's just.
Oh, no, I'm actually talking about the first floor window, not the top floor window.
No,
Or I guess it's a pantry, not a bathroom.
Yes.
all of the other windows are glass up and down.
Okay.
One more question.
Please go ahead, guys.
Maybe you could just give us a little more clarification on the tying in the downspouts and the gutters. Did you indicate that you're just going to tie in the stuff on the north side, or is it the whole house? Is it the garage too, or can you give us a little bit more detail on that?
I think that's something that the engineer would determine. I had understood the way the code is interpreted that Lake Forest prefers for water to splash to grade. So we had just been made aware of some drainage yesterday in a couple of letters we received, and so this is just some quick thoughts with the engineer. Nothing final has been submitted yet or approved, but currently I believe we were not required to tie any in. So that was just an idea to get some drainage away from the rear yard and by the driveway. The other side will have more pervious surface. So
A small lot like this where drainage is a concern, what is your experience on how do you manage that during construction, and what do you foresee for this?
as far as fencing or
Just how do you manage it? Because seems like it does go from west to east, and how long is the
water?
construction going to take? Is probably going to take.
water, to manage the water, we'll use silt fencing. That would it'll be tree protection, silt fencing certainly to the east and south. Any direction where the water flows to help prevent silt and mud from washing into the neighbor's yard. We would, if in heavy rains, pump out the foundation. But really between silt fencing and then site fencing, construction fencing for safety, of course. There's room to work, so.
Okay.
And as far as timing, I would say maybe 7 months from start. I would estimate. Was that a question?
I'm not sure that's.
Was that a question? You said timing of project or?
Yeah, I was thinking, if it takes you 8 months or 9 months or 7 months, how do you,
Yeah.
manage that during that time frame?
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Other circumstances, the engineering drawings.
Could you come to the microphone, please, guys? Sorry to keep saying that, but please do come to the microphone. Thank you.
As stated earlier, the engineering drawings that you're seeing are preliminary, and that's what we were led to believe is what was expected at this level. That being said, though, the engineer that we're working with certainly would work with the village engineer over concerns not just limited to the final drainage solutions, but construction drainage solutions. Proposing, water management, surface water management, which most likely would include silt fences, but, based upon the engineer's experience and the village engineer's desires, I'm sure that there would be a system put together to manage it.
Any other questions, gentlemen? Okay. Next step in the process is the public testimony, and anyone here On behalf of the public that wishes to testify, please come up to the microphone here. Tell us who you are, your thoughts. Anyone?
Hi, my name is Vicki Bertzos. I'm 1091 just south of the property. And my main concern is the water management. As of right now, I have a dry basement. I'd like to keep it that way. And during the construction and afterwards, excuse me, I'd like to be assured that that's addressed properly. Secondly would be the removal of the trees and what's going to be replaced. Has been a concern. It's such a small lot, and they're kind of squeezing a big house, excuse me, that it seems like they're taking a lot of space for water to run, and I'm concerned about the outcome.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Anyone else?
So, hi, my name's Peggy Schweller. I live at 1090 Edgewood, so I'm just east of this property. And I guess, my big concern is what we've addressed tonight with water and drainage, but moreover, also just privacy in general, because the flow is east to west. The level, of course, is higher behind us. And right now, I know the city arborist said that these spruce trees and some ash trees are, as he put it, just in poor quality. He'd like to replace with higher quality landscaping. I just want to make sure that if we are taking out spruce, that we could put spruce back, because it's really nice to have that privacy, even though they might not be of the highest quality. It's still evergreen, so it's year-round kind of privacy for us over on Edgewood Road. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else?
Hi, my name's Brian Bertola. I live at 1080 Griffith Road, which is kind of kitty corner to across the street from this project. And I'm an architect in town and just been approached by some of the neighbors just asking questions and looking for advice and guidance. So I'm kind of just speaking on behalf of the street. As you can tell, there's a lot of people here from the street. We're a really close-knit street. We watch each other's kids. We play in the street. So it's just a really tight fabric. And I think one of the concerns is, and I really respect, that you guys are doing a project, and I know this is a tough process, so I'm not trying to make it any more difficult for you guys. So I appreciate what you're doing and the presentation. It's just that to be a considerate neighbor and kind of reach out and know that you're affecting, your neighbors, and that you're building into a really tight-knit community. And to tell you the truth, none of even the adjacent neighbors had ever had an introduction to any of these individuals, and it doesn't speak well to the process going forward if there wasn't an outreach to find out what are your concerns, how do you live. I believe that leads to a successful design. And so just another concern is the lot right now is growing up with weeds. It hasn't been cut in months, and it looks terrible. And that's been a concern by a number of people. So I'm just generally bringing that to the attention, and that, just to know that this is a great street, and we're all very close, and we would expect that closeness from someone who's going to hopefully add value to the street. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Can you address the lot?
Please come up, sir.
I live at Larry Malice, 1096 Griffith. I live right across the proposed property. Can we address the lot and the maintenance of the lot today? I mean, how's that work? Do we
Any
get some
comments,
roads? Do we get
Kathy?
Landscapers?
Yeah,
We get
I
somebody-
can't get out there with a lawnmower tonight, but maybe the city can do something.
Can these folks?
I don't know. Why don't we have Kathy address that,
I've
please?
noted it. I will let the code enforcement officer know in the morning. He will make contact. Our process is we give one courtesy letter. If there isn't a response, then the city actually has a contractor that goes out, does the maintenance, and we charge back the owner. So we will address it, and my guess is that the owners have heard you, and they will probably address it in the next day or two themselves.
If it's not addressed so that we might note, does the city come out like every week, every 2 weeks? I mean,
Yes.
Okay, yes
Once
and
we
yes?
put a property on a maintenance schedule, we do go out and maintain it every 2 weeks until the owner contacts us and takes over that responsibility. So if you want to contact me in the morning, I'll put you in touch with the code enforcement officer.
Okay, appreciate it.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Kathy, any other comments on some of those points?
Thank you. On 2 points. The city arborist did look at the existing trees carefully, and there are a few that are not in poor condition, but to be honest, by the time the construction is complete, if those were saved, they wouldn't survive and they wouldn't be in good condition. So he felt that it was more appropriate to take those out and really ensure that proper plantings, and I've noted evergreens are important, but new plantings are done at the right size, of the right species, so that they can grow in very quickly. So that's why he didn't recommend saving anything on the site. And then second, I just wanted to note that staff did not realize that on the south elevation, the windows, the bottom pane of the windows was proposed to be solid. That would be very unusual. And my suggestion is that some alternative window configuration be looked at that side. Having windows that are opaque, that would be a significant piece of wood in there, painted white. So I just wanted to note that we didn't catch that, so.
Okay. All righty. The petitioner actually has a chance to rebut some of these questions or address some of those concerns as well. Folks, if you want someone who comes up here and talk, you don't have to, but if you want to.
First, the mowing, we apologize. I actually live not very far at all. I'd walked by this past weekend and frankly just didn't, there's just a lot going on. So we'll get that taken care of right away and have it on a 2-week schedule until we start. I think we were thinking about starting and digging and whatnot. I know that there was a concern about, there's several concerns about just the tight site and the nature of the site. During construction and water management and protecting the trees, we will be hauling all dirt from the site, which, not stockpiling, so it won't run directly into the neighbor's yard. And we will have the site fenced and locked for safety as a general, way to help protect from kids falling in, or not falling in, but just wandering through the site. We lock all of our sites. We put chain link fences around it. Helps keep us on our side and keep the neighbor's side protected. So I think you had a couple. Were there some other concerns, or it was mowing?
Well, the concerns of privacy and future landscaping and so forth, we'll certainly take as we develop the final landscape plans, take the comments into consideration. And the drainage, the natural flow is west to east of the surface. And when we said that we would reverse it, it was a thought that our engineer came up with just today in answer to what we heard as concerns about water flowing to the property to the east. We gave him a call and he suggested that, down the road, if it works with the village engineering, we could actually pick water up at the back of the lot and flow it west to the sewer under the street, which is about 3 feet below that grade. So it could flow back toward the west if it works with the Village of Lake Forest engineering. So those are concerns that we understand and encounter often, and we it'll be mowed regularly.
And regarding reaching out, again, we apologize. We do, before we start any foundation, we do introduce ourselves to the neighbors. We go by, our superintendent, the person managing the site, he gives his cell number, his email. But typically, the first thing they ask is, what are you going to build? This is kind of what we thought. We were coming here tonight to get approval of our plan. So not knowing what we're going to build, or we don't want to say anything if we don't know. So we will be introducing ourselves as just a standard course of construction.
Sure. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Any final questions from the board to the petitioner staff?
You just mentioned something that really does concern me as far as flow is concerned, as far as bringing it back west. Since I live right across the street, I don't know how that would affect, our flow into Griffith Road. So before he starts sending stuff back west, I'd really like to have a conversation with whoever the engineer might be.
Sure. And I think it's a great segue into the next portion of this agenda. Is for us to ask questions to the city, back to the staff or the petitioner. And I'll kick it off with a question. That is, Kathy, obviously the big question here that the audience has and the board's going to have is, what do we do about drainage here? Maybe you could just outline what the city engineer and staff would do to ensure people west, east, north, south are going to get satisfied with the drainage plan here.
Drainage plans will need to be submitted. Preliminary drainage plans have come in, but the engineers have not done a complete review or signed off. If it has not already been provided, the city engineer will require that the grades be provided, extending it a minimum of 50 feet beyond this property so that they're really looking at what's happening in all directions. In some cases, in tight neighborhoods, the city engineer may ask for further information before they were to approve tying in to the existing storm sewer. They will look at that storm sewer, look at the capacity, look at the condition, and also consider how diverting water may or may not affect vegetation on neighboring properties. We do know that there's a significant oak to the east of this property. We want to be sure we don't significantly change the drainage flows one way or the other. So there will be a long process. Certainly, if neighbors are interested in receiving a copy of the final drainage plan, you can contact me. Let me know when that plan comes into our office. We'll provide a copy. In some cases, neighbors choose to hire their own engineer and have an independent review. If they choose to do that, our engineer will take those comments and factor those into the review. So we're happy to meet with neighbors, do that review, but certainly drainage on these tight sites is real important.
Okay. Is there anything that this board can do to support the microscope with this drainage? Because we are concerned, I think, with it being correct. I don't know if there's part of the motion that we anything additional you'd suggest maybe that we do.
There are a couple conditions recommended in the staff report that I think are a bit more detailed than you normally see. They speak to, I believe, the requiring information beyond this property itself going into the adjacent properties. It also speaks to providing a plan for drainage during construction. For instance, we heard that the foundation might be pumped out. We would want, before any of that happened, we would want to know how that's going to happen, where that's going to be directed, so that we can approve a plan and not have a situation where that water is being pumped and ending up somewhere it shouldn't be.
Sure.
So I think with those conditions, we can really heighten engineering's awareness of this. This is also a project that we can put on a daily inspection during some parts of construction, so we really keep in touch with what's going on that site.
Okay, all right. Fellow board members, any other questions to the petitioner or staff before we go into our internal discussion? Okay, seeing none.
Well, maybe I'll ask one question.
Go ahead, Mike.
With the the second floor bump out at the northwest corner of the house, and you look at the house to the north where it actually steps back on the south side, do you have any comment as to like how that relates to the house to the north?
how it relates to the north. We'll pull back up. The house to the north does have a wider lot, and it's, the road kind of arcs there, so we, the setback is, if it's a different point because of the turn, it may appear to be farther or closer for that reason. I don't know how we open it.
I guess I was just concerned with that north facade because you're actually extending that out on the north facade, whereas in the house to the north, he was kind of stepping back. So I just wonder if that's going to just make it look that much larger.
I think, again, as John just said, the lots are so different. The lot we're dealing with is narrow, and the one next door, I believe, is 66 feet wide. It's
so it's 10%
quite a bit wider. So we're just dealing with a different buildable configuration of the site. The footprint's very different because of that.
And if we lose, if we lose the bump out, we can add it. It will. It's gonna. I think it's the bend in the road. It's just the way the street is, and the offset is should be the same front yard setback. So, which both houses I believe comply with.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right, let's take it to board discussion then. And Fred, you want to start your thoughts, comments?
Yeah, a couple of things. The first item is the kitchen windows that have been mentioned already. I heard the comment that they were solid panels in the proposal, and I wanted to get back to that, and it's already been picked up otherwise. But I'd like to suggest that the wood panels go away, and that I think a more direct approach would be to not have that lower portion of the window that isn't a window, and just have an honest statement about the windows above the cabinets being small windows above the cabinets. Part of the rationale is that those two windows are already different, if you will. They're higher. They're not at the same elevation as the others. And any attempt to make them like the other windows, which is a bit contrived since they can't be windows, is already in trouble. So I would suggest abandoning the effort to make them like the other windows and let them be different. Other members of the panel may feel differently, but anyway, that's my thought and just an opinion about that. Regarding the bump out to the north, which was a question that the staff had raised for us to discuss, my read on that is that it contributes to the quality of the design, that the curve in the road and the flare in the spacing between the house to the north and this house allows it the latitude to have a feature, and I think it was mentioned in the presentation that it is a feature, and I think it adds to the attractiveness of the house, and I have no difficulty with that bump out at the stairway to the north. I think it's a positive element. And then the third item that I'd like to comment on is the porch entry bump out that was discussed, the roof. And I would just bring up another aspect to that consideration, which is the floor plan. If you look at sheet D2, there, those of us who have sheets, those who don't have sheets can't look at D2, but probably can be on the screen if it's easy. But one notes there in D2 is that there's a doubling of the columns that porch projection bump out, as it's been called, allows or is accompanied by two sets of columns on each side, which I think in itself is a nice bit of a celebration of the entrance, identification of entrance, and frames the stairs. It ends the stairs. Otherwise, they're out there with some unceremonial kind of ending, just sort of some stairs sticking out there. I think it has a nice sense of finesse in terms of the scale, that it's a more finite scale compared to the bulk of the house. And it brings with it, yes, the bump out of the roof. I find it could be done either way, by the way. The bump out of the roof, I think, could be yes or no. But when you look at the paired up columns, I think it leads me to say yes, because it makes those features possible there on the right side of the screen. Which leads me to just one final comment, and this is a part of it, that the house, I think, is very sympathetic to the neighbors and the character of the other homes on the street. But I think it also brings a little bit more. And I think that what comes to my mind is it has somewhat of a jewel-like quality. It has a subdued, restrained palette in a palette of grays. So it's not going to be a shouting and say, I'm different and I'm new on the street and look at me. It doesn't say that. It's very subdued and quiet in its expression. But at the same time, I think jewel-like. I think it's a very attractive house, which does lead to one more comment, the concern of the neighbors for the tightness of the neighborhood. And I think that's wonderful. But I would just leave it maybe with the thought that a very nicely designed house may attract some real nice neighbors, and they would become a part of your neighborhood. That's it.
Thanks, Fred. Bob?
I'll go clockwise around the house. This neighborhood, I think, first of all, let me say it this way. I think a four-square is a great choice for this neighborhood and for this lot. But a four-square without embellishments. I'm very troubled with all the roof lines and gables in the front. I think that's got to be vertical and just straight linear. Everything's got to be just squared off, pushed back till you got one vertical wall with the details. That's my first issue. The second issue is that bump out. I know my colleague likes the concept, but I think it's too ornamental for a four-square in this particular neighborhood. And I think that should be linear and straightened out by itself. If you go to what would be the south elevation, this concept with this wood panel below the transom windows for me is an absolute no-go. I note on the floor plan for the kitchen, it looks like those windows themselves, you can see it on the D2 sheet, you can see there's a space there, and it's left and right of the stove. So it's kind of like you got the stove with the back panel and the exhaust, and you got windows left and right. Well, put windows left and right. It'll look better than trying to, shoehorn this stuff in the way it is. And I agree with you in the sense that it's too high. It's offset, and then you got the windows above it, which are off, and they could easily be squared off because the master bedroom's above that can be tied back in. And then when you go to the basically east elevation, there's two different roof lines on the back that are a little bit off. That you've actually got the roof on the top, and then you've got literally three roof lines on the back on the lower level, which to me is just too much. On the north elevation, I kind of do like that. I don't know, I guess it's a wall dormer. I don't know the terminology. I kind of like it because it breaks it up, and for that neighbor, that's great. But as I go back to my first comments, that extension of the house going forward on that, which would be the north elevation, is just too much because the neighbor's house is going to be overwhelmed by it. And then we also don't have a footprint on how this structure relates to the neighbor's structure and whether that's going to affect how they view the street or how this fits in with the two adjoining properties. We can keep going. There's like the dormer on the west elevation at the top. It's got asphalt shingles. It looks like it blends right into the roof too. I mean, there's just too much, and I'm not prepared to even go anywhere with this.
Okay, so like the four-square choice, need to address a couple things is kind of what you're running. Okay, all right, Michael?
Same sort of thing. I like the design. I think it's fitting for the neighborhood. The materials are nice, the color palette and all. I think the front facade could be simplified, with my concern on that. And the kitchen windows obviously is a concern that I think should be addressed as well. So generally, I'm very supportive of it, but I think it could use a little bit of refinement.
Okay, great. Ted?
Again, to echo, I'm beating a dead horse, but simplifying the elevation lines, getting rid of ancillary gables, getting rid of ancillary bump outs. I don't necessarily have an issue with the dining room, or I'm sorry, the living room and the bedroom directly above it extending forward, but then extending it yet again on the first floor just adds a kind of layer of complexity to the elevation that is a detraction. Again, on the kitchen windows, like my colleague said, similar to the north elevation in the living room, you've got smaller, higher windows, but the top level of the windows are all aligned across the full elevation of the first floor. I think you should be looking to echo that. You're successfully doing it on the north elevation. I think it will succeed on the south elevation as well. And then again, circling around the house to the family room, again, there's just that little ancillary notch out that's creating yet another bump out. So I would ask you to revisit cleaning up the corners and avoid extra bump outs that are not necessary. I cannot echo enough the concern of drainage, and very pleased to see that the city is recognizing the need for the developer to address drainage during construction, as well as the post, upon completion and going forward. Other than that, I have nothing else to add.
Okay. Thanks, Ted. Ross?
You've got a difficult situation. You have an infill site in a old, quaint neighborhood, tight-knit neighborhood. And frankly, you're building a for-sale home. So you don't have the connection. There are storm issues that need to be addressed. So you're spinning plates here. That said, it is a buildable piece of property. You have the right to build a home that meets with the codes. And our job is to attempt to see that it fits the character of the neighborhood as best possible and some other criteria. My colleagues have stated it very eloquently. I tend to agree that the Foursquare is a perfect choice for this site. I also agree with some of my colleagues that that living room bump could probably be flattened, which would simplify the home and reduce its massing subtly, probably just appropriate for the neighborhood. I too am concerned with the kitchen windows. That MDO board, you know what's going to happen over time as well. They will be a maintenance issue. They will delaminate, they will peel. Not to mention, frankly, I think it's an eyesore from the get-go under the best circumstances. So I agree with Fred that celebrate. It's all right to have a couple of windows that have a different rhythm to them. Celebrate them, raise them, and side across the bottom. Landscaping, everyone has discussed, is critical, so your feet will be held to the fire appropriately. I would imagine Kathy, is it inch for inch?
At a minimum.
And Ted's point, and everyone else's, the storm situation is not just upon completion, but it's in progress. So when you have a foundation with the sump pit, because your drain tile's in and it's draining into that pit, you're going to be pumping that water out. And if you're just going to splash it, that water is going to your neighbors. You're going to have a problem right from the get-go. So there needs to be in-progress attention to the storm situation, whether that means you tie your storm sewer into Griffith Lane immediately and pump into that, and then later as construction progresses, and the roof is on, and the gutters ultimately are installed, then you drop those into the storm sewers straight away. But my suggestion is you have that storm sewer tied in immediately. Help alleviate what's the major concern here. That's all.
Ross, just take a quick poll here. What do you think of the box, the bay window on the north side? Are you okay with that or no? Or
I'm okay with that.
Okay, Ted?
I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with it.
I'm okay.
Okay, and the reason why I ask is I got a feeling here that I don't know if we have a quorum here to pass it tonight. We might have to go back to the drawing board, and I'd like to give the petitioner as much direction as possible. So that's one element. I do agree that the northwest element, the two-story element that juts out, I'm not a big fan of that. I think that could be cleaned up personally. I think overall, the building's very attractive. I think Foursquare is a very nice selection here for the type of house that you're trying to build. Nice materials, very high-quality materials, and I think you're about 98% of the way there, guys. It's really going to, I think, be a nice addition to the neighborhood, actually. But that being said, especially some of Bob's comments, the windows and that bump out, I think I don't think we've got the board approval here now until we get some, probably some refinements. With your input, guys, I think maybe request a...
Do we revisit?
Revisit with some improvements.
With some modifications
With some
relative
modifications.
to our comments this evening?
Would you guys be supportive of that, or?
I would be. Yeah, I'd
Okay.
be supportive of that.
Okay.
So I just moved, so I guess make a motion to continue the petition to have them readdress the issues we discussed tonight.
I think that's right.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll move to continue the petition to allow the petitioner to address our concerns tonight and come back.
Great. Okay.
Second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The petition is continued. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is consideration of an overall signage plan for a multi-tenant building located at 959 South Waukegan Road. The owner is Lake Forest Bank and Trust. Representatives Marlo Crutcher, Project Manager, and of Wintrust Corporate Real Estate. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and respected board members and staff. I am here to discuss the location of 959 South Waukegan Road. The bank had moved into the location. It was the old Northern Trust building. It was strictly a banking facility with a vacant second floor. Signs were changed temporarily to show the new bank name. We now have a third-party tenant that is not affiliated with the bank, who is completing construction and plans to move in July 1st. These signs have been redesigned to include the new tenant name. Based on the staff comments, we're going to continue our request for sign B, which is our freestanding streetscape sign, but seek approval for the remaining directional and building signs. In the packet, I believe that you each have. Sign B is the sign that we are going to be refining per the staff comments. With regards to sign C, which is the building lettering, we ask that you refer to the Lake Forest Bank and Lake Bluff. They will be the same type of lettering with the pins that hold them up against the building themselves. They'll be drilling them into it and affixing them to the building. With sign D, this is above the front door, which is on the west side of the building, I'm sorry, the east side of the building. This is for a carved-in stone for the name of the bank itself. Right now, we just have a temporary overlay. If you wanted to see example of that, we can remove that so you could see that as well. Sign D is just a blank sign for over east-south side entrance, just to blank it off. Some of the other directional signs, we'd gotten some staff comments with minimizing the double names on each of the directional signs, which we will take into consideration and go forward with that. So, and that's about it. If you guys have any questions, which I'm sure you do.
Okay. Thank you very much. Kathy, staff comments, please.
Thank you, Chairman King. The overall signage plan presented is very similar to the signage that has been in place on this site for a long time, when Northern Trust was at this location. The fact that this will now be a building with more than one tenant, it's very appropriate to do the signage change. I think from the staff perspective, looking at sign B. That's the identification sign along Waukegan Road. I did receive a contact from bank representatives, and they are going to step back and look at that, look at the size, look at the shape, look at the materials. So that is not before you tonight, but certainly if you have any thoughts about that sign, I'm sure the bank representatives would appreciate that.
Indeed.
The other types of signage, I won't walk through them one by one, but they are all consistent with the code requirements. Staff recommendation really speaks to limiting the repetitiveness of naming the bank and naming the tenant. Certainly it makes sense at the outer driveways, but then once you get internal to the site, it seems appropriate to just have the directional message be there, and in fact that will make that message stronger. Having a second tenant identification sign on the east side of the building near the entry is very important, since that really is a new feature of this building. What's proposed is a subtle sign in the ground near the entrance, which seems appropriate. There is the addition of a wall sign on the front of the bank building. It's done in a way that's very appropriate for this style building. And it really is warranted to call Lake Forest Bank and Trust out as the primary tenant. I think the only sign I've missed is the currently at the exit drive at the north edge of the site. I believe there's a do not enter sign and an exit sign.
Correct.
And I have spoken with bank representatives. They agree that a single sign there, probably making the point do not enter, is very important because it is a wide driveway and someone could think that that's the way to get in. So overall, simplifying the signage package just a little bit, but the materials are consistent with what's there, and we'll work with the bank representatives on that front sign. But staff recommends approval of all elements subject to the conditions in the packet, except for that one sign. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thanks, Kathy. Okay. Questions from the board to the petitioner or staff?
I've got a question.
Go ahead, Ross.
Sign D, please clarify, I just didn't pick up on the, what's happening here. You're eliminating, obviously, the Northern Trust limestone.
Correct.
And inserting marine grade plywood.
Yes.
in
This is
lieu
just,
of, so that is no longer a signage. You're eliminating the signage?
that is correct. And that is an entrance that is not used by customers.
And Kathy, are the signs, do they meet the city requirements in terms of size?
They do, because this is campus signage, the directional signage isn't directly called out in the code, but I think in this case, it's really important to have that signage identifying reserved parking, identifying the drive-up. You have several different things going on. So that directional component is really something that the board has the ability to approve in really what is a campus setting with multiple things going on.
Thank you.
Those are all the E signs, right?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Kathy, I'm still a little confused. It seems like everything's buttoned up except for the front sign on the main sign on Waukegan. Is that the one in question? And the petition, like feedback from us as far as materials, size? I mean, what are you looking for us here, Kathy?
My understanding is the petitioner internally is going to go back and talk about it. What's proposed right now is an aluminum sign. Early on, we had discussions about a masonry sign.
Correct.
A wood sign may be appropriate, although an aluminum sign was used at Lake Forest Bank and Trust location on Conway Road. And I forgot to use the microphone. Because of the masonry nature of this building and the architectural style, an aluminum sign may not be appropriate. I think if you had thoughts and what direction you'd like to see the bank would welcome those, but I think you're going to go back and study it internally regardless.
Correct.
This sign is not backlit?
We were proposing, we were proposing to have ground lights for it.
Oh, but not,
Uplighting.
uplights, but not from behind.
That is correct.
I would be concerned with such a large sign in wood in terms of its structure and its longevity.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Well, I think whatever is being considered should be either the aluminum or metal of some sort or masonry, but I would state my recommendation is to steer clear of wood at that size and it's directly exposed
Yeah,
to all elements.
I agree.
Chuck, is this just open question and answer, or are we following the norm?
Well, for everyone but you, Ted, but no, you can do it. No. Let's freeform it. Sure, go ahead.
Me next? Okay. I think the aluminum lettering in the front is very tasteful, and I support it. I think the primary signage in the front announcing Lake Forest Bank and Trust's presence as well as your tenant works. At your entrance, it works. As city staff pointed out, once somebody is on your property, they've already know who's there. And repeating it on every sign is overkill. My personal preference would be it's unnecessary once someone's there, and eliminating the tenant names once you've passed the points of entry. I also wanted to speak to the exit sign that also identifies the tenant names, because I think that to a degree might cause confusion as an entrance. If by removing the tenant names from the exit sign, eliminates anyone who might be driving and not paying close enough attention, saying, "Oh, I might have just missed the turn." And if you just focus on no entrance, exit only, just keeps that message nice and simple. That's all I have to add.
Very good.
Any other questions, guys?
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay. Okay, no public here to testify, so, any final questions? I think we already covered that. So, internal discussion at this point, and personally speaking, I think sounds like the petitioner is willing to accept everything that Kathy and staff has come up with, and I don't know how you fellas feel, but I'd rather not tax these guys to come back for just one sign on the front. Would we entrust city staff to make a good decision on that and maybe move that along? So maybe we include that as part of the motion to save everybody some time and money and efforts. So with that being said, maybe let's move this thing for approval quickly. And
All right, so I move to approve the petition as presented, subject to the findings and recommendations in the report, and allowing city staff to work out the finalization of the B sign.
I second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion is approved.
Thank you so
Thank you very
much.
much. Appreciate it. Okay, next item on the agenda is the opportunity for the public to address the board on any non-agenda items. Seeing no public, we'll move on. Any other additional information from the staff, Kathy?
No, I do expect that you'll have your new member, and we'll be at full numbers at your next meeting.
Okay, I do have a question on timing. Would it be the 3rd, be the next meeting? First Wednesday a month? Because if that is, I doubt that this board will have a quorum on that night, so just something to think about.
I'm just checking.
Actually, it's a second.
It's a
Wednesday
second.
the 2nd.
That could still be
You're
a
right.
problem.
It could still, well, I guess we'll just have to call it out and see if people are around.
We'll
at that time.
poll,
Okay,
we'll do
sorry.
an early poll. I'll
Yeah.
have Michelle do that and
Okay.
let her know when we can move it.
That's great. Okay, appreciate that, Kathy. Okay, any other comments? See none? All right. We are adjourned. Thank you.